Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is James and you're watching Wonderful World. And if you're thinking about getting a snake and maybe it's your first snake, then that's one of the most exciting things you can do. But sometimes deciding on what that first snake should be can be a hard decision to make. So in today's video, we're going to compare and contrast three of the most popular beginner snakes. And those are the corn snake, the king snake, and the ball python. Now all three of those snakes make excellent beginner snakes, but they do have their differences, and those differences could determine which of those snakes is the right snake for you. So we'll start with the corn snake. And right now my corn snake pumpkin and my king snake rex are both in sheds, so I'm going to have to rely on some older footage to show those to you. And I know right now that my king snake is in shed because he's buried himself in his substrate and has not come back out. And I know that in about 7 to 10 days he's going to come out and do his shed, and then his black and white colors are just going to be vibrant and shiny. And this is what Pumpkin looked like a couple of nights ago, and you can see that his eyes are clouded over, and most snakes' skin just looks dull and gray when they go into shed. But I love Pumpkin's colors when he's in shed. Being an amelanistic or albino, his colors are usually very orange with a little bit of yellow, but when he goes into shed, these colors turn to more of a pastel shade of orange and yellow and even pink. Corn snakes are probably the most popular pet snake in the world, especially for beginner or first-time snake owners, and for good reasons. One reason the corn snake is such a good choice for a beginner is its size. They are a reasonable size to work with and handle. A corn snake stays relatively slim and gets to a length of 3 to 5 feet, with females being larger than males. When you get a corn snake, it will probably be a baby and not much bigger than the size of a pencil. And babies can be housed in a smaller enclosure, but for an adult corn snake, you're going to need something no smaller than 30 gallons. But 40 gallons would be even better. Corn snakes are also relatively easy to care for. Their temperature and humidity requirements are fairly easy to achieve, and they're generally good eaters. Another reason corn snakes are a good beginner snake is their docile and friendly disposition. They're not prone to bite at all. Babies can be a little skittish and can be nippy, but as small as a baby corn snake is, they can't even get their teeth into you. And if you do it right, they're relatively easy to tame and socialize. And as adults, they can be very easygoing. However, as with most colubrid snakes, they do like to move around when you handle them. They don't really sit still, not so much trying to get away from you as much as being curious and wanting to explore everything around them. So it takes a little bit more concentration and work to hold a corn snake because they like to move around so much. And this might be one thing to consider when deciding what snake is right for you. For some people, that more active nature is what makes them fun. But someone else might want a snake that moves more slowly, like a ball python. So another popular beginner snake is the king snake. And there are a number of different subspecies and locality types of king snakes, and milk snakes are in the same family as well. So I might be generalizing a little bit. Some types of milk snakes are a little bit more squirmy and spastic than king snakes, But like corn snakes, king snakes are known to be very docile and easy to work with. King snakes as adults can grow to sizes just a little bit larger than a corn snake, with some reaching up to 6 feet, and can be just a little bit girthier. I think the biggest difference between a corn snake and a king snake would definitely be their response to food. King snakes are excellent eaters and are known for their strong food response. And for this reason, it is a little easier to get bitten by a king snake if they go into feeding mode and mistake your hand for food. But there are ways to avoid that happening. I have a previous video where I talk about that, and I'll put a link to that in the corner. For me, though, I wouldn't let that be a reason to discourage you from getting a king snake. Care for a king snake is also relatively easy. They prefer a less humid environment and a slightly warmer basking area than the corn snake. So unless you live in a particularly humid area of the world, that's not too difficult to achieve. And since they do prefer a drier environment, bioactive setups are a little bit more difficult to maintain, but doable. Or you might need to just provide them with a humid hide when they're getting ready to shed. If you do decide on a king snake, just be aware that when it grows to its adult size, it might need a little bit larger enclosure. If your king snake ends up on the larger size, it may need a minimum size enclosure of 4 feet by 2 feet. And as far as king snakes go, how I would describe handling a king snake is that being a colubrid snake, they do like to move around and explore when you're handling them, but maybe they move a little slower than a corn snake, and sometimes will just sit still in your hands. They are generally very docile, and even a little bit nervous king snake will become very docile once it's in your hands and realizes you're not a threat or food. So maybe you want a snake that is a little bigger or moves a little more slowly. And if that's the case, then maybe a ball python would be the right snake for you. Some people might say that ball pythons are boring and like owning a pet rock because they spend their entire day sleeping in their hides and only come out at night. And to some extent that is true. Corn snakes and king snakes are crepuscular, meaning they're most active at dawn and dusk. You may see a corn snake or a king snake come out to explore their enclosure or bask more often during the day. While ball pythons are nocturnal and sleep during the day, but are very active during the nighttime. I wouldn't let that discourage you from getting a ball python, because really any snake, whether it be a colubrid or a constrictor, or nocturnal or not, is going to spend a large amount of time hiding and sleeping. And that's actually usually a sign of a healthy snake. You really don't want your snake to be out and active in its enclosure all of the time, because that could be a sign that something's not right in your setup or husbandry. As far as care goes, I'm almost reluctant to list ball pythons as a beginner snake because they do have some more specific care requirements and do come with a few challenges that corn snakes and king snakes don't. Ball pythons need a more humid environment, something closer to 50 to 60%, and even a bit higher when it's time to shed. Ball pythons are notorious for having stuck shed if that level of humidity isn't achieved, and that can lead to a number of serious health problems if it's severe enough. But you don't want them sitting in wet substrate either. So achieving that level of humidity in the air without making the substrate too wet could be a challenge to an inexperienced keeper. For this reason, while aspen shavings can be a good substrate for a corn snake or a king snake, ball pythons need a substrate that's going to hold humidity well, and in my opinion will do best in a bioactive setup. Another challenge with ball pythons is that they are famous for being picky eaters and sometimes refuse food for weeks or even months at a time. But that's just how they are. And for even experienced keepers, that can be very frustrating and nerve-wracking. So not to discourage you from having a ball python, but if you decide on a ball python, these are just things that you will deal with and need to be prepared for. But this isn't a ball python care guide. I have a previous video on ball python care, and I'll put a link to that in the corner. And while ball pythons, just like any type of snake, can have different personalities, and some can occasionally be more shy and defensive than others, I think the reason ball pythons are so popular as pets is because they are so laid back and easygoing. Just like any snake, babies can be a little bit shy and nippy, and that can be a little intimidating to an inexperienced keeper. But with regular handling and socialization, they just become super tame. They move slowly and hold on to you a little better than the colubrid snakes. And I find that holding and interacting with a ball python is one of the most relaxing and therapeutic experiences a person can have. So those are just some of the differences between these three different beginner snakes. And I hope you found this useful if you're trying to decide on what might be the right snake for you. And whatever you do decide on, just be sure to do some thorough research on caring for that particular snake. So that's all for today, and as always, like and subscribe, and until the next video, I look forward to seeing you again soon.